think it's multiple factors. I think there are three causes, but they do all relate to policy, just not all the same policymaker. One is the global imbalances that I think came about because of decisions in many emerging Asian economies to accumulate massive dollar reserves for their own policy objectives. China is clearly a lead example there. Second was U.S. monetary policy in the period, say, 2003 to 2005 was clearly way too easy, poured gasoline on the flames of an emerging bubble. And the third is the fact that it was too easy to do regulatory arbitrage. The capital standards weren't as good as we thought. Some regulators clearly weren't up to the task. So I think all three of those were very important factors. So they are policy contributions, but they're not all one person's failure. I don't. I think there's some very tough questions the Fed and other regulators will have to look at. I don't think that Glass-Steagall, the separation of commercial and investment banking, would have been terribly helpful here. In fact, there were some pure banks that got into trouble. There were some pure trading houses that got into trouble. And in fact, where we had rescues, it was precisely bringing together banking and non-banking. So I'm not sure that helps. There are also concerns people have about, maybe should we draw bright lines about the size of banks? I'm not particularly persuaded that that's useful either. I think there isn't going to be a simple answer. I do think it involves better risk management. I think it involves stronger attention to capital requirements. But no, I don't think Glass-Steagall is the answer. Well, I sense the congressional frustration with the Fed. I think the Fed's wandering into politics is bound to get the Congress's attention. Congressman Paul has introduced this bill how many times, but to not much success until now. And I think the reason this success has happened now is the Fed has become a bit more political, too political, in my view. Having said that, I don't think the Paul bill is the right answer. The Fed, of course, already is audited in the accounting sense of that term. My concern would be Congress attempting to conduct its own monetary policy by pushing the Fed around. That, I think, is a decidedly bad idea. I think that Chairman Bernanke's response to the financial crisis has been both bold and experimenting. While one doesn't necessarily agree with every single thing the Fed has done, I like the fact that the Fed has been bold during the crisis. The mild criticism I might have is that going into the crisis, the Fed didn't particularly see a lot of the danger signs or how large it would be. But many economists shared that view at the time, so I don't think one can blame the Fed per se for that. Well, first, there will be financial crises. I would love to tell you that the world's different. I don't believe that. We've had a history of financial crises. In fact, I think not paying attention to that history is part of what made us vulnerable. I don't think government actions to date make it less likely that we have a financial crisis. I think what could help would be some broader regulatory reforms, but I don't really see the Congress paying serious attention right now. Well, it is what you know from the work that Carmen and Ken did is that typically in the aftermath of the bursting of a bubble or financial crisis, government debt rises as government's trying to clean up the pieces. In many countries, that's led to a debt crisis. Whether there's a debt crisis is a story about both supply and demand. It's clear that the supply of debt has gone up. The question really is, what about domestic debt holders and foreign holders' willingness to hold debt? And that seems to me the bigger question. I am very worried if we stay on the present fiscal path that we will have a day of reckoning. And in that sense, I definitely agree with the Reinhart-Rogoff thesis.